This week at URI's hockey coach is recognized by President Parlange. We learn more about URI's fencing club. URI women's basketball beats UMass 63-48. URI tennis starts off their season with a win and a new coach. We see the first ever weekly segment of Podcast with a Profi, and we find out why nearby Charlestown was named Rhode Island's most charming small town. All this and more on this week's Good 5 Cent Cigar Newscast. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Lucas Masiello, and this is the Good 5 Cent Cigar. First up, every Tuesday and Thursday, students flock to the Memorial Union Ballroom to practice fencing. The Good 5 Cent Cigar's Kat Sheridan went to the Memorial Union to attend a practice and find out what the URI Fencing Club is all about.
I'm here at the URI Memorial Union Ballroom, where every Monday and Thursday from 5 to 8, the URI Fencing Club hosts their bi-weekly practices.
So there are three different kinds of fencing. There's épée, foil, and saber. And saber is a slashing weapon where you can hit with any part of the sword, and they wear a full metal jacket with sleeves. And if you get hit anywhere on that metal jacket, you get a touch made on you. Otherwise, as you can see, I'm wearing a vest. That means that's the only target area. This is for foil, which is a point weapon, meaning you have to stab. And then there's épée, where the whole body is target area. And so it's the community is my favorite part, and just the way that we all work together to help each other.
With the 5 Cent Cigar, I'm Kat Sheridan.
Thanks, Kat. Later, we meet communications professor Scott Kushner and find out why a small nearby town was named the state's most charming. All that and more after this week's Rhody Sports Corner.
Thanks, Lucas. Hello and welcome to your Rhody Sports Corner. I'm Zachary Petrick. The women's basketball team returned home last week, facing off against conference rival UMass. Peter Gigliotti has the story.
Well, it was 80s night here at the Ryan Center for a rematch of last year's co-regular season champions, as the Rams hosted the UMass Minutewomen on Saturday afternoon. Now, it's fair to say that the fans weren't the only ones feeling the groove, as URI started the game on an 8-0 tear, holding UMass to without a point for almost the first 5 minutes of play. Head coach Tammy Reese says that this tenacious attitude is exactly what she's looking for, and one that is emphasized heavily by her and her coaching staff.
It's the worst to not get complimented on how hard your team plays. It's the one thing I ask. That's the best compliment I can get, because toughness and working and hard work, that's intangible. And as a coach, that's the price of admission. And if your team doesn't play hard for you, that's a concern, and that bothers me. And so it's the one thing I ask our kids. Give it all you got. I can live with wins and losses, but not when we don't play hard and we don't play tough. That
attitude helped URI keep the lead for the entire game, not giving it up once throughout all 4 quarters of play. Leading the way for the Rams were Maye Torre and Sophie Phillips. Torre having a game-high 15 points and 8 rebounds, and Phillips having 13 points and 3 three-pointers. If you had to describe URI's play in one word, it'd be efficiency. URI shot 44% from the field, out-rebounded UMass 36-26, and every player to touch the court for the Rams scored at least one time. All of this helped the Rams to a 63-48 win, their second straight game in the win column.
Obviously we always want to win at home. That we don't even discuss. That's a given. But it was really how we played. We have to start. We're getting to the second half of the season, and we got some really tough teams we have to play. So you have to start knowing, what do we hang our hat on? Are we going to show up every day and battle? Toughness, win the boards, be able to defend, and do you have momentum? Are you playing better than you were 2, 3, 4 weeks ago? We are.
After the victory, the Rams are now 14-8, sitting at 6-3 in conference play. They'll look to add on to their 2-game win streak next week against a George Washington team that has lost 4 games straight. From inside the Ryan Center, I'm Peter Gigliotti with the Rhody Sports Corner.
The tennis team kicked off their season at home over the weekend, facing off against Siena College. Lucas Masiello has the story.
The URI women's tennis team started the season off strong with a 6-1 win against Siena College. Playing at the International Tennis Hall of Fame in Newport, Rhode Island, Singles players Nadia Rajan, Valentina Kvakova, Nikki Fernando, Clara Nylander, and Eva Gernja won in straight sets. Sienna walked away with the doubles point, winning all 3 doubles matches. The win indicates a strong start to new head coach Jonas Brabek's first season with the Rams. On the ground in Newport, 5th-year player Nadia Rajan tells us more.
I'm very happy. This is my last season playing, so starting the season with a win was really nice. My new coach who started this year has made me feel really confident in my play, so I'm just excited for the season. Coaches encouraging me, they were pushing me the whole time, telling me to hit my shots, be confident, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
With the Good 5 Cent Cigar, I'm Lucas Masiello.
URI Club Hockey head coach Joe Augustine was honored over the weekend for passing Frank Keeney's all-time win record of 707. Augustine has been behind the URI bench for 713 wins over 34 years, officially passing Keeney on November 18th in a 2-0 win over Northern Illinois. Keeney held the win record since 1948, coaching basketball, football, baseball, track and field, and cross country during his tenure. Now let's take a look at some of our scores around campus. Men's basketball fell to George Mason before returning home to take on LaSalle. Women's basketball defeated UMass before traveling to Washington, D.C. to take on George Washington. The swim and dive team wrapped up their regular season by defeating Central Connecticut State. Women's track traveled to 2 events in Boston over the weekend. Men's track competed in the Riverhawk Invitational on Saturday. That's all we have for this week's edition of the Rhody Sports Corner. For live updates across all URI athletics, be sure to follow us on social media at Cigar Sports.
Up next, communications professor Scott Kushner is a researcher that focuses on how we interact online. Eddie Brito finds out more with the inaugural segment of Podcast with a Profi.
Hello, I'm standing here in front of Davis Hall today, where I'll be interviewing Professor Scott Kushner, and I'll be asking him a little bit about his expertise in communications and just some questions about teaching at URI. Let's go. I'm here with Professor Scott Kushner, and I'd like to know, why are you teaching here at URI?
Why am I teaching here at URI? Well, I got very lucky is kind of the short version. There was an opportunity to come teach here, and I was able to grab it. It's worked out really nicely for me. I've got good students, I've got great colleagues, and it's been a happy place to make a living and build a life.
And what's your favorite part about URI?
You know, I get the chance to teach stuff that I care about, and to work with students who come from like all sort of different programs. So I teach mostly courses in media studies, and I teach them from a humanities or cultural studies perspective. So I get students from the communication studies program, I get students from the sports communication and media program, I get students from PR, but then I also get students from across the university. I get students from some of the humanities fields, I get students who come out of engineering and science departments. There's always like a little trickle of students from the College of Business, and so it's interesting to see how students who are studying all kinds of different things sort of converge on topics that have to do with media, which in some sense or another touches the work that most students are doing and certainly the lives that they're living.
Nice. And what's your favorite class here to teach at URI?
Oh, you know, I love all of my classes, but I think the one that I've come to really love most is media theory, which is column 446. It is a course that I struggled with for a few years before I finally kind of figured it out, and so I think part of what has made me, you know, come to love it is having kind of gone through that struggle. The big breakthrough that I had was figuring out that the value of a theory course for students here, for the most part, is not so much in learning the ins and outs and the finer points of the media theory tradition, which in my life has been very rewarding, but that's not the career path that most students are taking. So what's really valuable for most students about reading media theory with me comes from the work that they do in learning how to read, understand, and explain complicated ideas. And so once I figured out that was really the the thing that students could really benefit from in a course in media theory, that like led me to rethink the course and rebuild it, and it's been great fun since then for me, and I hope for my students also.
I love that. And so, what led you to be a communications professor? Like, what did you take in college, and like what led you up to communications?
So this is the weird part. I'm kind of an odd duck. I never studied communications in college, and I am not. I don't think I could really give a coherent response to the question like what is media or what is communication studies. In fact, I'd never studied or worked at an institution that had a communication studies program anything like ours until I stepped foot on campus. So my background is in the humanities, and when I was in grad school in a literary studies program, my interests shifted from 20th century novels to what at the time we called new media. And I was fortunate to be a grad student at an institution that was kind of adventurous, and I had an amazing supervisory committee that I worked with, and they were sort of willing to follow the project where it led, and I ended up doing work on political blogs in France and the United States, which at the time seemed super cool and now seems extremely out of date because blogs have become rather passé. So that kind of led me down this path of studying media. And then as time went by, I did a much better job kind of integrating the training that I had in the humanities, not just media, not just literary studies, but also work that I'd done in history and philosophy over the years. And most of the scholarship that I do now is really to do with questioning categories and sort of rethinking what we're talking about when we talk about media, what we're talking about, in a sense, when we talk about communication. And a lot of what I try to show in my scholarly work is that the meanings that we usually assign to them are actually kind of incoherent and don't comport with sort of the intellectual roots that the terminology had, and even that the scholarly traditions have.
With the 5 Cent Cigar, I'm Eddie Brito, and thank you so much for watching today.
Thanks, Eddie. Last up, nearby Charlestown is a picturesque beachside community that has become a popular location for student renters, and it was recently named Rhode Island's most charming small town in a Far magazine. The Cigar's very own Aiden Cahill went to Charlestown to find out what makes this town so special in this week's installment of Aiden on Location.
Recently, Travel Afar magazine named Charleston as Rhode Island's most charming small town. On today's episode of Aiden on Location, we're checking it out to see what Charleston really has to offer.
The town of Charleston is only a few miles south of campus on the southern coast of Rhode Island, directly between South Kingston and Westerly. My first stop on location, Ninigret Park.
In my opinion, a lot of what makes Charleston so charming is its nature and places like this, the Ninigret National Wildlife Refuge. To me, this state is just so naturally beautiful, and Charleston is one of the very few places where you can easily see that.
While Ninigret is beautiful, I covered it in depth in its own episode of On Location back in November. Just a few hundred feet down the road, however, is the fantastic Umbrella Factory, a unique set of farm shops with a bamboo forest, chickens, and an emu, who, unfortunately, couldn't stop for an interview. While at the town beach, I stopped and spoke with Pam and Joe, two Charleston residents, about the recognition their town had recently received.
Well, I definitely think it's a quaint town. I definitely think it has a small town feel to it, where there's, one coffee shop, one little grocery store, one gas station kind of thing. And I think what makes it so unique is there's a lot of beach, and there's also a lot of trail walking and open space. So yeah, I would say it's pretty charming.
In my eyes, it's a great little quaint coastal town, and they got to remember it. It's a quaint, quintessential New England town.
Even just being a quaint New England town brings a certain level of charm.
So is Charleston really the most charming small town in the state? Well, that's tough to say. Beyond the lakes and beaches, there's not really that much to do here besides the umbrella factory. But everywhere you go in Charleston is beautiful. So is Charleston really the most charming small town? No, but I'd say South County as a whole is the most charming place in the state.
That's all we have for you this week. Thanks for watching. Be sure to follow us here on YouTube and Instagram at Rhody Cigar and pick up our print paper anywhere on campus to stay up to date with URI's only student-run newspaper. I'm your host, Lucas Masiello, and this is the Good 5 Cent Cigar Newscast. Have a great week, Rhody.